Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Nathaniel, author of The 91st Day, and someone who has spent years behind the scenes in human resource dealing with the conversations, conflicts, and workplace chaos most people never see. After witnessing firsthand how bad the leadership and toxic cultures can affect people's lives, Nate decided to tell those stories honestly and maybe make work suck a little less in the process. He's also a new dad, an avid cyclist, and someone on a mission to bring the human back to human resource. Nate, welcome to Conversations in Second. It's a
Thank
privilege
you
to have
so
you on.
much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
All right, so how's it like being a new dad?
Life as a new dad is wonderful. I swear, this little dude, his name is Aiden, is absolutely adorable. He is a year old now, and he is getting into so many things that we have to just be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what's he getting himself into? But he is so much fun, which is the best.
All right. Well, so yes, thank you, Nate. And can you take us back to when you were younger, basically? So what kind of kid were you growing up? And were you always interested in, should I say, work, basically? Were you always goal oriented, right, from when you were much more younger?
Of course. So I would say starting out in my 20s, early 20s, I graduated, not even really, that probably gets teenager year, graduating college, whatever. I thought I was going to get in human resources right away. I'm going to do this. This is going to be great. It's going to be so easy. I'm going to be the best HR person ever. And I couldn't find any jobs because I didn't have any experiences. So how am I supposed to get experience if I don't have experience? So what I did is I took little elements of each part of human resources and decided to work at a job that kind of incorporates that. So, working at a restaurant, you're learning how to talk to people. When I worked for JetBlue, at the airways, I was learning how to deal with people who are upset or having conflicts with each other, conflicts with me or the airline. And then finally making my way into an office where I'm sitting in an office and doing regular work, not HR work, just kind of like program coordinated work, learning how things work that way. And all these little pieces I'm able to put together into being a solid human resources professional because I've been on the other side of all these industries. So I know what it's like to be the person who's, frustrated by all these communications from HR that's coming in, or, I've had my own HR issues before when I'm dealing with human resources. So, I'm able to kind of incorporate those experiences and know what it's like in the other person's shoes and incorporate into my role in HR.
Hmm. Wow. All right. So yes, thanks for, sharing your story or your journey with us, basically. Now, I want us to talk about entering the working world, right? So, what was your first experience with corporate life like? I mean, and what surprised you the most, actually?
Yeah, I'd say my first experience, I guess, with corporate life is I worked for a car insurance company. And
Mm,
my mommy, I was that crazy because there's a lot of work. It's very busy. I learned how to work very hard there.
mm,
So it's just doing car insurance. So being on the phone, speaking with customers who just got into their accident, the worst day of their life, and now they are um, talking to me and trying to get what they need to be done, where they asked to tell them who's at fault and how to get their car repaired and all that type of stuff. So that was my first entry, but that's my first experiences to having like an actual like boss who's sitting right next to me and listening in on my calls. And that was made me very uncomfortable. I didn't know what that was like because I was just working part-time jobs, or things like that. So it was cool to kind of be in the corporate world a little bit and known as how politics works, corporate politics, how people talk to each
mm.
other, how to be professional, how to send emails professionally, not just like a text message. So it was a really good entry into the corporate world. So I definitely learned how to work hard, which was probably the most important takeaway from there.
Wow. All right. So yes, thanks for that one, Nate. And I just remembered, right, a video I came across on TikTok.
Mhm.
So, they were likening people in the workplace to animals, right? I mean, the character traits. And then most people liken the HR to a snake, the green snake in the green grass kind of thing. I mean,
Mhm.
or chameleons, right? Because they are not straightforward. So what do you
Yes.
think about that, basically?
It's fun. You can do anything. I always sometimes will ask a question that's even like if I'm doing an interview or something like that for someone for a job. I'll ask questions that are random like that. Like, what type of animal would you be and why? What type of cookie would you be and why? What part of the bicycle are you on? Things like that. So that's always fun things to ask. And I decided to go on TikTok to kind of help people feel more comfortable about understanding about how
Mhm.
HR works and how to apply for jobs, how to do your resume and all that type of stuff.
Wow. Okay. All right. So yes, thanks for that names actually. And so yes, have you ever, had a moment where you thought that something is seriously broken here in the workplace, basically?
Definitely. So the thing I see the most broken system here is what I call the 90-day probationary period. So basically,
Mm,
it's the first 90 days of when you start a job, in your even your first corporate job or whatnot, you have 90 days where it's like a trial period where if they don't think you're
mm,
doing good, they can just cut you loose, they could, if you're doing great, that's fantastic, but it's almost like an audition for yourself and then the
yeah,
company too. But once that
mm,
90-day probation period ends, it's like, okay, you're good. I'm good. Now I don't have to pretend anymore. And that's when the culture
mm,
starts to fall apart and you really get to see who you hired and who you're working for. And they always say, oh, once you get the 90 days, we'll be good. We'll move on. But most people quit their jobs after that 90-day period because they
mm,
don't know what happened. Everyone was so friendly. They were getting invited to lunches. And now all of a sudden I can't talk to you. The door is closed,
mm,
and people don't know what's going on. All their training ends. So they kind of feel like they're alone on an island. So it's a very broken part of, I think, the corporate world. And that's why I wrote a book called The 91st Day, which is kind of like about how it's able to manage people beyond that 90 days because things can go
mm.
crazy as you know. So it's fun, but it's definitely a big problem here.
All right. And do you think there's a way for solutions to this problem, basically?
Definitely is. I would say keep the culture going, as I like to say.
Mm,
Don't stop at a certain point. Constantly check in on your people. If this is just from a company standpoint, constantly check in on your people. Make sure they're still doing okay. You're offering trainings. You are inviting them into meetings. You're letting them participate, and you're judging them fairly, not different. Be like, okay, that was the 90 days. That's the pre part, but now I'm going to judge you differently because you should know better. It should just be the same
mm,
throughout. And same for the employees. Like if you're a new employee, you're on in your 20s and you're trying to do your first job, feel free to not let that 90-day thing scare you and continue being yourself. Start being yourself in the beginning and continue that going through.
mm,
And feel free to ask questions, knock on doors if you have to, set up meetings, take the initiative on your side to do things too.
mm. So it's about, being authentic,
Being
right?
your
From the
authentic self.
beginning, right?
Exactly. If everyone
Authenticity.
could just be authentic, it'd be great.
Exactly. Wow. Okay, so I like that you mentioned your book, right? The 91st day, basically. So why do you think it was important for you to, tell stories honestly, instead of writing another business book, full of buzzwords, basically?
Exactly. So the first thing is I didn't want it to be a how-to book. Like this is how to do
Mm,
HR. Step one,
mm,
step two. I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted it to be from a perspective as, myself, being a character,
mm,
in a book who's living it through it day by day. So this is what happened, and this is what I learned from it, and this is how it's moving forward. I found
mm,
it very important to tell these stories is because a lot of people they think of human resources or in HR in the corporate world as the scary bad people that are just trying to fire you or hire you or make you sign paperwork and that's it. Um, but also managers themselves don't know what's going on in those human resources offices. A lot of times this employee will knock on an HR's door and be like, "Hey, can we talk about something? My manager's doing this or my team is doing this," and it gives you that perspective of what's going on in my office and how I'm helping
mm,
you as a manager. I was like, I'm not out to get you. I'm not going to get you in trouble to the employee or the manager. Is like I'm here to genuinely help you to see what's wrong, so that way I convince you that everything's okay or help make things okay. That's the goal at the end of the day is just to make sure everyone is doing fine. and happy where they're coming to work. Because if you're not happy going to work, then why do we bother doing this? It's great to make money, but if you're not happy making money, it's a big problem, and quality of life is very important these days.
Exactly. It's well said, actually. And I was gonna ask, right, what do you think separates a healthy workplace from like a toxic workplace?
I think what you said earlier, authenticity is important, but in the
Mm.
good way, obviously. Don't be, I once had to deal with a manager who said she has no filter and you get what you get
Mm.
and you don't be upset. So this is how I am. I'm not going to change, and that's it. Yes, she was living authentically, but you should still live professionally too. But what really makes the difference is having a real understanding about your people and caring about people. I always say this
Mm.
story, like if you're, let's say you're a manager and you're walking around saying good morning to everybody in the morning, and you're just saying good morning, good morning, good morning, and you're like expecting to hear good morning back, and you get upset when someone doesn't say good
That's right.
morning or something like that. That makes for a toxic environment. People think like they have to be like, oh, yes, good morning, sir, good morning, and they're bowing down. That's not something that's the type of culture that you don't want. You want to sit down with them during lunch hour and just be like, hey, this is cool. I'm the CEO of this company, but I like hanging out with you guys. Tell me what's going on. What's going on in my company that I don't know about? That's very
Mm.
important. Having good people programs and good benefits is also important too. Make sure people are paid fairly, that they have good, time to take vacation is super important, and all these types of things. And even for the young folks who are looking for, their first career, I urge you to be picky and not just find the first job that you come across. Make sure you have a good interview and you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you, so you can see what the culture is like. Have them ask if they can take you on a tour of the office. Sometimes you can just see, you can catch the vibe and the drift of how the office is, or ask if you can speak to a current employee who's currently at the job now, so you can ask them questions. Be like, what's the best things about the company and what are the worst things? That way you know what it is going in. But to answer your question in general is just make sure that you care about your people more than you care about your money at the end of the day. You make sure
Mm.
you care about the people and your money at the exact same time. Don't pick one or the other.
Right. Wow. Okay. So thank you, Nate, for that beautiful one, I would say. And I like that you said ask questions, right? It's
Mhm.
just some kind of questions you ask. Those the HR start to feel uncomfortable, right? They withhold some answers to those questions. Like for instance, when you said, "Can I talk to an employee in the company?" I do not think many HR would be comfortable with that. So what do you think about that, basically?
If they're not comfortable with it, you don't want to work there. That's all
Hmm.
I gotta say is that you want someone that would be like, sure, obviously, we really want to hire you. Maybe not on the first interview. That's kind of made to check you, but say they bring you in for a second or a third. If they
Hmm.
don't want to have someone speak to you, that's what I would call a red flag. Just be like, clearly
Hmm.
they don't want you talking to somebody. I mean, maybe they're worried they'll give out secrets or whatnot, but if you just ask, you say, I just want to ask questions about what life is like, what day in the life is like on your team or on someone's team.
Hmm.
If a manager's be like, sure, we'll invite, someone in, some of the best interviews I've ever had when I interviewed for a job, it was for an HR manager role who I was going to be managing, but like six other HR employees who were beneath me. And,
Hmm.
they came and chatted with me and had a conversation with me, which I thought was really cool because I could really see what was going on. And it was very nice that even like the payroll clerk was able to speak with me, who makes you not much money, but they're able to kind of have a say in if they wanted to hire me or not. So that was really cool. But and when I've done interviews, I've invited other employees, for a different position, on the call and ask questions too. It leaves it there. It kind of helps you make that decision. Say that someone's in between two companies, trying to choose one or the other. You wanted to do
Hmm.
the one who was willing to speak with you.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. And I think that's a beautiful idea, actually, because it's good to, know that where you want to work, they want you to, right? It just creates this healthy relationship between the employees and, the HR or the managers. You would love your workplace, right? Because that's the goal. I mean, love where you work, love where you eat. I mean, when I mean eat, your money, right? Love it.
Yes.
Basically. All right. So yes, I want us to talk about, looking ahead, basically the future. So what are you excited about right now, both personally and professionally?
Okay, so personally, I'm excited that one, my baby boy is going to start walking soon. Maybe I
Hmm.
shouldn't be excited, but I am excited because he's
You
trying so
should.
hard, and I can't wait to chase him around the backyard and whatnot. That's on the personal side. And also personally is that I just released my book this past Saturday, so it was really cool to kind of be able to share the book out and distribute it because I'm not an author by any means. I've never written a book. I don't like reading. So it's really cool to kind of be into this new phase of, I'm doing this and doing podcasts like conversations with Sekani and everything like that. So it's wonderful to do all these cool things. And yeah, of course it's summer too. So that means I can go back on my bike, I can go to the beach, we can spend time with the family. So those are the things I'm looking forward to personally, but even professionally, I would say it's definitely the book, these speaking opportunities, and continuing to change HR and bringing the human factor back into HR exactly where it belongs. We're called human resources for a reason. You
For
know,
everything.
that's the most important thing is bring the human aspect of things. Remember that you're speaking to people, not numbers, and making
Mm.
sure people are happy with what they're doing.
Right. Okay. So do you think you would, eventually write more books or continue,
I think I can write the night.
challenging?
Yeah,
Mm.
I think I can write the 92nd day after this one because it's the
Ah,
91st day, it's the 92nd day. What happens after the 91st day? I'm
that
sure
first,
there's
right?
plenty of stories in HR that I'm sure I could write about, but obviously depends on
Exactly.
how this one does, but
Mm.
uh, who knows? The world is your oyster, I always say. Who knows what can happen? I'm only in my early 30s, so who knows what could happen down the line.
Exactly. Wow. All right. So yes, thank you, Nate. And before I ask my final question, right, I would like to ask, what impact do you hope your work will have on future generations, entering the workforce?
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of I guess people getting older,
Mm.
and a lot of the old ways of things, like sometimes, people, who started work, in the 2000s or the 1990s, are
Mm.
now in positions of power, nowadays, and they're very old school managers and things like that. What I'm trying to change is to coach them so that way that they can coach the younger generations underneath them to have this approach, this human approach to human resources, where
Mm.
you're genuinely caring about one another and the person and making sure everyone's happy and has time to go away and has, you know, you, to be happy with what they do. I find that extremely important. That's what I hope to do for the next generation coming in and the ones who are, maybe just graduating college now. I would love for them to see that this is how HR is. It's not the scary stories that they tell you about, that HR is a
Mm.
place where you can knock on the door, it'll be open, they're really willing to talk to you, not like a therapist, but be able to talk to you about anything that might be bothering you or might be going on. We're not here to make, get you in trouble at the end of the day, and that we just care and we want you to be happy.
Right. Wow. Hmm. Okay. I just randomly remember a conversation I had with a friend, right? So, I was telling a friend that I had a guest one time that said she left her job because she felt like they did not care about the employees' emotions, right?
Mhm.
And my friend said, what has the workplace got to do with your emotions? I mean, those two they don't fit. You're not supposed to be emotional when it comes to work. Leave your feelings at home. When you get to work, let it be strictly work. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I found that interesting, right? So
Mhm.
what do you think as an HR? What do you think about that statement?
It's definitely a statement that's known is that you're told that you have to be professional at work. You show up, you do the work, you go home. That's how the best way to survive work is. But that's not realistic at the end of the day. You get people who are have different states of what might be going on at home. They might be going through a divorce, and any small thing can make them very upset. Or they might just be had a new baby and now they're just so tired and exhausted. So you can't there are emotions, and at some point they have to come out at work because you're at work 8, 9 hours a day. Most of your time, most time people spend, with their coworkers at work than with their families at home just because of the hours in the day. So you can't pretend to be okay for 8 hours of one day. Psychology just doesn't work like that. So that's a misconception, with HR is that, sometimes another HR person who may not be me, who might have different opinion on HR than me will be like, I don't have time for this. I can't, I don't have more tissues, no crying in my office, get out of here, or anything like that. Or I don't care about your personal situation, which I've had before, where I had a manager do performance evaluations and she gave someone like a two or a one just because they
Mm,
had to go, they had their kid was sick in the hospital for a month and they were in and out of work. So it's like it's human resources is just has to be that human element, and the corporate world and policies aren't meant for one employee. They are designed for one employee that doesn't exist. It's more important that make sure that they exist for multiple people in multiple situations.
right. Wow. So yes, thank you, Nate, for that beautiful perspective. I think it's interesting, by the way, and it's true
Mm.
also. So yes, yeah. And finally, right, do you have any piece of advice you want to give to the younglings who are probably entering the workforce, right, and trying to navigate the workforce?
Of course. I always say I'll start off with my three life pieces of advice. I'll do that and then I'll go into HR. So number one, always have a valid passport. Number two, never say no to a free meal. And number three is to make sure that never let anyone get in the way of your dreams. At the end of the day, you have to do what you need to do when it comes to the workplace or even your personal life. Um, my biggest thing is always to stay curious and ask as many questions and annoy as many people as possible. Have lunch with coworkers who are 20 years older than you. Have lunch
Mhm.
with, interns, have lunch with someone who's, with you too. Just make sure that you get to know people and understand the role. And just know that you have potential to do anything and don't let anyone stop you from doing that, including yourself.
Wow. Ooh, okay, yes, I needed to hear that. And I believe my listeners, as well, they would use this information to their advantage, actually. So, yes, thank you, Nate. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment.
Oh
You could
boy,
either
here we
answer
go.
with a word or a phrase starting now. Coffee or energy drinks?
Energy drinks.
Ooh, okay. All right. So, work from home or office?
Work from home all the way.
Oh, wow. Okay. So bike ride or this is all related, right? But bike ride or Netflix?
Ooh, that's tough. Oh, I have to go. Oh man, I would say both, but I'm gonna go with the bike ride. I gotta get clear my head.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So what is one book everyone should read?
Everyone should read a book, aside from the 91st Day, which is my book. I won't be that. A book called High Hanging Fruit. It's a really cool book that I like to read and that kind of inspires me. It's about Zico coconut water, I believe, and it's the story of how he's able to come up with the company based off of one vacation trip. So it's
Mhm.
really cool to see how he was able to do things beyond his comfortability and get himself uncomfortable to be doing things. So that would be the second book that I'd recommend reading after the 91st Day.
All right. Wow. Okay. And finally, define success in one sentence.
Success. I can do it in one word, and that would be happiness.
Wow. Hmm.
That's the best way. I could do it in a sentence, but I would say when you are happy, you have succeeded. If you can feel any sort of happiness, you did it right. You did the right thing.
Exactly. Right. Well, whew, okay. So yes, this has been deeply insightful, I would say, and totally grounding. And finally, before you go, where can listeners get to, learn more about you and also connect with you?
Of course. So I would definitely recommend going to my website, www.the91stday.com. It has
Mm.
every link to the book itself. The book is also available on Amazon on Kindle as well as Barnes and Noble for your a physical copy. So that is all available for you to check out. My contact information is on my website as well. So if you need any advice in HR, I'm always here and always down for a phone call or whatever.
All right. So, wow. Yes, thank you, Nick. And I'll put a link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. And to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Nate, and do have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye bye.